What if the wildest visions of the future were imagined long before modern effects, digital worlds, or streaming even existed? The 1970s quietly dropped sci-fi films that bent reality, rewired expectations, and left audiences wondering what on earth they had just witnessed. Hidden inside that decade were movies so bold they still feel ahead of us. And as we look back, something becomes clear. The strangest ideas were never accidents. Some were warnings wrapped in wonder. Number 15, Phase 4, 1974. It begins with a whisper, a desert, a research station, and a pattern forming in the sand that should never exist. Phase 4 isn't loud or flashy. It's quiet, unsettling, and clever in a way most sci-fi of its era never dared to be. The plot sounds simple. Ants start behaving strangely. Scientists investigate. But from the first moment, you feel something off. This isn't a nature story. It's a transformation story. Director Saul Bass, the legendary designer behind some of Hollywood's most iconic title sequences, stepped into the director's chair only once, and he swung for the stars. He imagined a world where a small change in the natural order hints at a much bigger shift. Patterns in the desert link to patterns in the sky. Ant colonies behave like thinkers, and every slow, sun-baked shot feels like a message coming from something we don't fully understand. Phase 4 never spoon-feeds answers. It shows a strange intelligence rising, observing, adapting. The scientists start out confident and calm, believing logic will save them. But slowly, the tone changes. The ants are not acting out of instinct. They are strategizing. By the time the ending crawls toward its infamous final image, you understand why this film still gets talked about decades later. It isn't about insects. It's about evolution surprising us. Phase 4 blew minds because it showed that the future might not belong to machines or humans. It might belong to whatever learns faster. Number 14, Westworld, 1973. Before theme parks had holograms or digital mascots, Westworld asked a simple question. What happens when the attractions start thinking for themselves? Released in 1973, this film was years ahead of its time. Set inside a futuristic resort where guests live out fantasy adventures with lifelike android performers, the story begins as a fun escape and slowly twists into something far more eerie. What made Westworld stand out wasn't just the concept. It was how grounded it felt. These weren't metallic machines. They looked human. They walked, talked, reacted, and followed scripts with perfect accuracy. Until one day, they didn't. A tiny malfunction becomes a chain reaction, and suddenly the park is dealing with something it was never designed to handle: awareness. Yul Brynner plays one of the most memorable characters of the decade, a cold, relentless figure whose silent stare says more than dialogue ever could. His presence alone created the blueprint for countless future science fiction characters who challenged the line between imitation and identity. Westworld blew minds because it wasn't just about technology breaking. It was about our belief that we could control everything we build. The film predicted a world where entertainment and artificial intelligence blur until no one can tell which rules apply anymore. Watching it today feels like a prophecy, waiting patiently for us to catch up. Number 13, Solaris, 1972. Solaris doesn't rush. It drifts. It lingers. It pulls you into a world where the biggest mysteries are not found in galaxies, but inside the human mind. Released in 1972 by director Andrei Tarkovsky, this film shocked audiences because it refused the usual space adventure style. Instead of rockets and battles, Solaris took viewers to a quiet space station, orbiting a planet that thinks. The setup feels familiar. A psychologist arrives at a remote station where the crew has been acting strangely. But what he finds is beyond logic. The planet below reflects thoughts, memories, and emotions back at the crew. Regret, love, grief, all materializing into physical form. Solaris isn't interested in monsters or danger. It asks why humans fear their own past more than the unknown. Viewers expecting fast-paced action were stunned. Solaris moved like a dream. Long shots of drifting corridors, conversations that felt heavy with meaning, characters facing reflections of people they lost long ago. The film became a rare kind of sci-fi, one that treated space not as a frontier but as a mirror. What made Solaris unforgettable was its bravery. It dared to say that technology is tiny compared to memory, that the mind is deeper than any ocean. and that no matter how far we travel, we take our stories with us. Solaris blew everyone's minds because it wasn't about exploring the universe. It was about exploring ourselves, and that journey never really ends. Number 12. Logan's Run, 1976. Bright colors, glittering domes, a future that looks perfect from far away. Logan's Run dropped in 1976 and immediately stood out for its bold world building. This was a society without hunger, without conflict, without chaos. Everything looked ideal, but of course, there was a catch. Life ended at 30. The story follows Logan, a man whose job is to track anyone attempting to escape this rule. At first he believes the system is flawless, but when he gets too close to the truth, the perfect world begins to feel like a beautiful trap. What made Logan's Run so mind-bending wasn't just the twisty plot. It was the idea that comfort can hide control, and that an easy life can also be the most limiting. The film's glowing city design was ahead of its time. Floating walkways, color-coded rooms, and a dome-shaped paradise created one of the most iconic sci-fi aesthetics of the 1970s. Beneath that sparkle was a message the decade wasn't expecting. When society chooses convenience over curiosity, something precious fades. Logan's Run blew minds because it disguised deep questions inside a bright, stylish package. It asked viewers to wonder whether youth-obsessed culture comes with a cost, and whether freedom is worth chasing, even if you don't know what waits outside the dome. Number 11. Silent Running, 1972. Silent Running begins with something gentle. A forest floating in space. Birds, plants, peace. Then you realize these are the last forests left from Earth, preserved on giant greenhouse ships after the planet has lost all its natural life. Released in 1972, this film didn't shock people with action. It shook them with sadness. Bruce Dern plays a botanist who loves these forests more than anything. When orders arrive to destroy the domes and return home, he makes a decision that changes everything. What follows is a quiet journey filled with stunning visuals, small emotional moments, and a trio of little helper drones that became instant fan favorites. They move simply and honestly, giving the film a warmth most sci-fi of that era didn't dare to show. Silent Running blew minds because it treated environmental loss not as spectacle, but as heartbreak. The emptiness of space becomes a metaphor for the emptiness left behind when nature is gone. The film's message was decades ahead of its time. It warned that progress without care leads to regret, and that the things we value most are fragile, even in the vastness of the universe. Its slow, thoughtful pacing wasn't typical for the decade, but that's why it stands out. Silent Running remains one of the most emotional sci-fi stories ever made, proving you don't need noise to change someone's perspective. Sometimes the quiet speaks louder. Number 10. The Omega Man, 1971. A deserted city, empty streets, sunlight bouncing off abandoned cars, and one solitary man driving through it all like he owns the world. The Omega Man, released in 1971, didn't just grab attention, it stunned audiences. Charlton Heston plays a scientist who believes he is the last healthy human alive after a global crisis reshapes society into something unrecognizable. What made the Omega Man so wild for its time was not the setup, but the atmosphere. The film opens with silence, then slowly reveals that he's not truly alone. A strange, infected group roams the shadows, forming a new kind of community with rules that clash directly with everything he stands for. They see technology as the mistake of the past, and he sees them as the final reminder that humanity never moves forward in a straight line. The Omega Man hit people hard because it flipped the idea of survival. It wasn't about outrunning danger. It was about outlasting loneliness. Every empty street and quiet. Rooftop paints a picture of what it feels like when the world keeps turning, but almost no one is left to witness it. Even decades later, its imagery influenced countless post-apocalyptic stories. The Omega Man blew minds because it showed a future that felt too quiet, too close, and too possible. It was the 1970s whispering that isolation can be just as intense as action. Number 9. A Clockwork Orange, 1971. Few films hit the screen with the force of A Clockwork Orange. Released in 1971, it wasn't the explosions or special effects that shocked viewers. It was the world itself. A future society overflowing with cold design, strange slang, and unsettling calm. Stanley Kubrick crafted a vision that felt hypnotic, dangerous, and strangely familiar all at once. The story follows a young man whose life spins from carefree chaos into a system determined to reshape him. Instead of flying cars or space adventures, the film focused on something much more unsettling: control. What happens when a society decides that change is more important than choice? Audiences at the time weren't ready. The film pushed boundaries with style alone. The music choices, the strange, futuristic rooms, the slow, steady shots that made the future feel polished but not warm. Every scene felt like a warning, wrapped inside bright colors and perfect symmetry. A Clockwork Orange blew minds because it predicted that the future wouldn't just be about machines or cities. It would be about influence, about how easily people can be shaped when systems decide what is acceptable. Beneath its stylish presentation, the film whispered a bigger question. If a person's choices are taken away, is the world actually better, or does it just look cleaner from far away? Number 8. THX 1138, 1971. Before George Lucas created galaxies far away, he crafted something darker, colder, and far more intimate. THX 1138, released in 1971, takes viewers to an underground society where every aspect of life is monitored and controlled. No sunlight, no individuality, no emotion. Only white corridors, constant supervision, and rules that leave no room for uncertainty. What made THX 1138 astonishing was how real it felt. The sets were minimal and bright, giving the environment a sterile look that made every character seem small in comparison to the system surrounding them. This wasn't a world of lasers or futuristic machines. It was a world of quiet pressure where people moved like shadows inside routines they never questioned. The story follows a worker who begins to feel something he shouldn't: curiosity. Suddenly, he notices details that don't fit. He wonders where these rules came from and why no one challenges them. That small spark launches the film into a slow but powerful escape story that focuses more on emotion than spectacle. Viewers in the 1970s had never seen anything like it. THX 1138 blew minds because it suggested the most overwhelming future might not be loud or chaotic. It might be clean, controlled, and empty of choice. Lucas showed that sometimes the most frightening world is the one that feels calm on the outside, while quietly erasing what makes people human. Number 7. The Man Who Fell to Earth, 1976. Every decade has a movie that feels like it arrived from another planet. In the 1970s, that movie was The Man Who Fell to Earth. David Bowie, already known for his otherworldly presence, stepped into the role of an alien visiting Earth to save his distant home. And from the opening scenes, audiences knew they were watching something different. This wasn't a film about glowing spacecraft or cosmic battles. It was a story about a visitor who tries to blend in, but slowly realizes that human society is far heavier and more tangled than he expected. Bowie's performance is quiet and haunting. He moves through the world as if gravity pulls him differently, giving the entire film an energy that feels half dream, half warning. The movie shocked viewers because it didn't follow traditional sci-fi beats. Instead, it explored how a gentle outsider can crumble under the weight of Earth's rules, temptations, and pressures. Technology becomes both his hope and his undoing. Human connection becomes comforting but confusing. And through it all, the film's surreal visuals push the viewer to ask what belonging really means. The Man Who Fell to Earth blew minds because it held up a mirror. It showed humans through the eyes of someone who doesn't understand their patterns, revealing just how strange, busy, and overwhelming everyday life can be. Number 6. Soylent Green, 1973. Imagine a future where the world is overcrowded, resources are thin, and even simple comfort feels like a luxury. Soylent Green, released in 1973, created one of the most haunting cinematic futures of its time. It took place in a city drowning in heat and humanity, where people filled every street, every stairway, every open space. Privacy didn't exist anymore. Hope felt distant. Charlton Heston plays a weary investigator tasked with looking into the death of a wealthy official. But as he moves deeper into the case, he starts noticing unsettling gaps in the story. Why do the powerful live so differently from everyone else? Why do food supplies seem controlled by a small group with secretive plans? And what exactly is Soylent Green, the miracle product keeping the population fed? The film stunned audiences because it used mystery not just to entertain, but to reveal the hidden cracks in its world. Every clue points to an uncomfortable truth about scarcity, desperation, and how people cling to comfort even when something feels wrong. Soylent Green blew minds because it blended a mystery tale with a future that felt disturbingly possible. Its sweaty, crowded streets and dim living spaces created an atmosphere that stayed with viewers long after the credits rolled. It warned that when society stops protecting the vulnerable, the systems built to save us might reshape the world into something none of us recognize. Number 5. Alien, 1979. Alien didn't just surprise audiences in 1979, it grabbed them by the imagination and refused to let go. The film began with a quiet spaceship drifting through deep space, peaceful and almost cozy. Then it slowly peeled that comfort away, revealing a world where the unknown waits patiently in the dark. What made Alien so mind-blowing wasn't only the creature itself. It was the build-up. Director Ridley Scott created a setting that felt real, functional, and lived in. The crew wasn't made of shiny heroes. They were regular workers dealing with everyday concerns until they stumbled upon something they were never meant to find. Every corridor, every blinking light, every echo made the ship feel like a maze you could get lost in. The story unfolds with a rhythm that keeps tightening, each discovery raising more questions than answers. The unknown element they bring aboard doesn't behave like anything familiar, and when the truth finally reveals itself, it's clear that curiosity has a cost, especially in a place where no one can help. Alien blew minds because it showed how powerful slow-building fear can be. It took the endless quiet of space and filled it with possibilities that were too strange to fully understand. Instead of explaining everything, the film left enough mystery to make viewers wonder long after they left the theater. It wasn't just a sci-fi adventure. It was a reminder that the universe is bigger, darker, and far more creative than we expect. Number 4. Stalker, 1979. Stalker is the kind of film that sneaks into your thoughts. Released in 1979, it dared to break every rule of what sci-fi was supposed to look like. No futuristic cities, no spaceships, no glowing inventions. Instead, it presented a quiet, abandoned landscape known only as the Zone, a place rumored to grant people what they desire most. 3 men journey into this forbidden territory: a writer, a professor, and a guide known as the Stalker. Their path takes them through crumbling tunnels, flooded rooms, and wild, empty fields where silence feels louder than dialogue. The tension doesn't come from visible danger, but from the idea that unseen rules are always at work, twisting the world around them. Stalker blew minds because it shifted the genre from spectacle to philosophy. It asked questions most films avoided. What do people truly want? Can a place reflect the human heart? And how far will someone go when they believe a single room can change their life forever? Director Andrei Tarkovsky filled the film with careful shots that linger longer than expected, creating a hypnotic effect that makes every moment feel personal. Viewers walked away not with clear answers, but with a strange feeling that the journey meant something different to each person who watched it. Stalker remains one of the most mysterious, thought-provoking films of the decade. It didn't show the future. It showed the mindset of people searching for hope. Number 3. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, 1977. In a decade filled with daring ideas, Close Encounters of the Third Kind stood out by doing something simple. It treated wonder as something real. Released in 1977, the film told a story not of fear, but of connection. Steven Spielberg built a world where the impossible doesn't arrive with panic, but with curiosity and anticipation. The story centers on Roy, an ordinary man whose life changes after a mysterious event leaves him obsessed with a shape he doesn't understand. He starts carving it into mashed potatoes, drawing it on paper, seeing it in his dreams. That shape belongs to a place he has never been. And he's not the only one feeling the pull. As scientists begin noticing strange signals and uncanny sky patterns, the film slowly builds toward a moment that audiences had never experienced before. Instead of loud chaos, the encounter arrives like a musical handshake full of color, sound, and awe. Close Encounters blew minds because it imagined a future where mystery didn't equal danger. It suggested that the universe might be reaching out to us, waiting for us to listen. The film's final scene, with its glowing lights and unforgettable melody, became one of the most iconic moments in cinema history. Spielberg transformed the unknown into something hopeful, proving that sci-fi could inspire just as much as it could startle. Close Encounters of the Third Kind turned curiosity into a story, and audiences left the theater believing that maybe, just maybe, we are not alone. Number 2. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Before high-tech thrillers dominated the screens, The Andromeda Strain delivered a shockingly realistic look at scientific crisis management. Released in 1971, the film began with a mysterious tragedy in a small town and unfolded like a carefully designed puzzle. A team of scientists is sent to investigate, discovering a strange organism unlike anything known before. What set the Andromeda Strain apart was its attention to detail. Every lab, every tool, every containment room felt chillingly authentic. Instead of dramatic chases or explosions, the tension came from quiet procedures and logic. A small mistake could be disastrous, and the film made sure you felt every second of that pressure. Audiences were stunned by how believable the story felt. The multi-level underground facility became a character on its own, full of bright lights, automated systems, and hidden dangers that had nothing to do with typical sci-fi creatures. It was the 1970s, showing that scientific precision could be just as gripping as any action scene. The Andromeda Strain blew minds because it respected the intelligence of its viewers. It asked them to think, to observe, and to wonder how prepared we truly are for the unknown. The film remains a standout for its commitment to realism, proving that sometimes the quietest stories carry the loudest impact. Number 1. Star Wars, 1977. When Star Wars landed in 1977, it didn't just entertain the world. It restarted imagination itself. Nothing like it had ever existed. Audiences sat down expecting another sci-fi flick, and instead watched the screen open into a galaxy so full of color, adventure, and heart that it felt like stepping into a new era. From the very first moments, with a massive starship gliding overhead, viewers instantly understood that rules had changed. George Lucas created a universe that felt ancient and futuristic at the same time. Desert planets, glowing blades, strange creatures, and unforgettable characters filled every frame with life. This wasn't a cold, sleek version of the future. It was a place where myths, hope, and courage collided. What made Star Wars blow minds was its perfect blend of simplicity and scale. The story was easy to follow, yet the world around it felt endless. Lucas mixed old adventure storytelling with new visual effects, crafting scenes that pushed technology far beyond anything people had seen. Every sound, every costume, every creature added to the feeling that the galaxy had existed long before we arrived. Star Wars didn't just reshape sci-fi, it reshaped movies. It reminded people that storytelling could be fun, bold, and unafraid to dream. Its impact is still felt across nearly every modern franchise. Star Wars wasn't just a film, it was a spark that ignited a generation of imagination. So there you have it, a decade that didn't whisper its ideas, but launched them straight into the future. These 1970s sci-fi films didn't just entertain. They bent reality, challenged comfort, and proved that imagination can push farther than any blueprint. If one of these titles sparked a memory or made you curious, drop your thoughts below. Share this list with someone who loves a good mind stretch. And remember, the future starts with the stories we dare to revisit.